Hello and welcome back to another video. So yeah, here's Hyrule. Without further ado, here is the progress on Hyrule so far. A lot left to do, but this is just kind of a very, like I said in the last video, I want to be transparent about where the project's at. I think that it's been very encouraging after the last video to see so many comments show their interest and support and encouragement, and I really appreciate that, and that does give me a lot of motivation to keep working on this, because this is something that, I think this is cool. As a Zelda fan, I see the appeal in a project like this, and sometimes it's easy to forget that, I'm just one of many Zelda fans and people who played Wind Waker who felt the same way, because I think a lot of people who've played Wind Waker feel exactly the same way I do, that when you went to this area of the map for the first time and you saw the rolling hills and the river right beyond, you wanted to explore that world, and the game just didn't let you. And through this project, I wanted to kind of finally fulfill that. And it is a feeling that, I've had some comments say this, and I totally agree. It's a feeling that's been fulfilled by games like Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild, or even going back and playing Ocarina of Time, right? Sorry, Skyward Sword, you're not going to make that list. I like Skyward Sword. It just, if you want to explore Hyrule, it is not the game. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of do another kind of tour of the world, showcase especially the northern aspect of Hyrule. I think that's kind of a good place to kind of focus in on. So without further ado, let's just kind of get into it. I think this will be a better video. I was listening to my last video and I just felt like I was so low energy, and I don't want to force it, but just I do think I was too low energy, and I'm not trying to be the high energy guy, but anyway, here's Gerudo Town. I've shown this off before, and this is, I don't know what else there is to say. This is Gerudo Town. When I was making it, I was really proud of this, and looking back at it, it's kind of a rudimentary asset, but you look at it and you go, yeah, that's Gerudo Town. It's true to the design, and also I've kind of squared it off a bit, but I don't know, as I've been thinking about what this project is and the limitations of the GameCube, I don't mind certain aspects of the world kind of being low poly and simple. I'm going to unload some of these, like the Eldin Region for now, maybe Necluda and Central Hyrule too, just to focus on the Gerudo Region. But yeah, I don't mind it being kind of low poly, because ultimately what I'm trying to replicate here is the art style of a GameCube game. So it's okay if it's a little simple, right? I'm totally okay with that. And you start to zoom in here, and I feel like I could imagine this being a level in the Wind Waker, right? Over here, you could imagine and it could use some extra details, but you could imagine walking over there and seeing a stall set up and NPCs doing that kind of idle animation. You know how all the Windfall Island NPCs kind of have that sway to them as they just kind of stand there swaying back and forth. I simply love it. But I'm really proud of how this turned out, and taking a closer look at it, I'm still proud of how it is. And you can tell from looking at it, I used a lot of assets from the Forsaken Fortress, because that's the only other reference we have for, in Wind Waker, what might be Gerudo architecture. And I don't know if it's ever been confirmed. I think it's been confirmed that the Forsaken Fortress is built on top of the old Gerudo Fortress, but they are different. And I kind of wanted this to feel like a mixture of the old, kind of more Middle Eastern Gerudo architecture that you see in Ocarina of Time, mixed with the kind of Forsaken Fortress style that we see in Wind Waker. That is, I'm not exactly sure what it's influenced by. I mean, you look at the fortress here, I couldn't tell you, and maybe, it's a similar kind of stone fortress for sure, but they do elicit different feelings, and I like the idea that they're built on top of each other, which is what we're starting to get to in this map, right? There's the old Gerudo Fortress. I'm talking about it. I should just show it. Here's the old Gerudo Fortress from Ocarina of Time. I'm using textures from Ocarina of Time 3D. And the idea is that the Forsaken Fortress is built on top of it. So let's just look at it. There's still a lot of work left to do. This is very much incomplete, but you can kind of get the idea of yeah, this is it's on the top of a mountain. That's where the fortress is going to be. I like that for both of these fortresses, right? Putting them that high up, I think is cool because what am I trying to say? It kind of gives legitimacy to the idea that they're fortresses. They're built on the top of a mountain with a great vantage point. You can imagine being up there. Like, I think this is what's so cool, right? Because you can go to places that were in the games, like the top of this tower, and instead of just looking out over and seeing the ocean, which you could do, you know, like here's how it looked in the game, right? Like, I can turn on render view, and like this looks like I don't know if you can go to the Forsaken Fortress in the daytime, but at least if you could, this is what it looks like in Wind Waker, pretty much. But then I turn off the sea level, and bam, now there's a whole world down there. And I'm so excited to keep that feeling, right? This is something I showed off in the last video. That's something I've done as I've been modeling, is using this water layer to kind of test if I'm modeling things at the right height and figuring out where the ocean is, and you know, when it's on, this looks pretty much just like Wind Waker the way you know it. And then you turn it off, and then boom. I have some other layers turned off, but let me turn on Central Hyrule again for reference. Because I kind of want to show off some aspects of it for a second that I may have alluded to, but didn't quite give a whole lot of detail on. I think first off, now this is a whole part of the Gerudo region. I still need to work and change the textures on this. This is the Arbiter's Grounds borrowed from, I think, a test map in Twilight Princess. And so these are all like Twilight Princess textures, and I want to use textures from the Wind Waker and replace it with that. Same with like kind of this area. So that still has to get done. There's a lot left to do, and I'm excited to keep working on it. This is Great Fish Island, which, if you're familiar with the island, it's been completely reworked because I wanted to see what it would look like. And the textures are still kind of janky, and I'm still working on that. But from a geometric standpoint, right, like if I go into solid view, maybe that even helps. You can kind of see that, like, I've taken, in the game, like this section, for instance, like this overhanging section would have been like pointing straight up. Same with like this one, it would have been crooked. And I've now tried to take that geometry and reorient it so that it's all facing the right direction. Like you see how there's like, I can look at the way that this house was placed, and it's still in ruins, but now it's at least facing upward the right direction. And same with like the trees over here. And so that's been kind of a challenge as I've been doing like workshopping the ideas for some of these places. Like this is a place where I've been preserving the geometry, and I'm trying to figure out, like, does it make sense? Oh, I need to fix some of the alpha stuff on these leaves. Okay. I haven't taken a close look at this region in a second, excuse me. But you see stuff like the ruins, and I've reoriented the direction of a lot of the geometry so that it's all facing a way that, you know, maybe you get a feel for the island before it was destroyed. But I'm trying to figure out, like, is it even worth rebuilding like places like this house so that you see the island before it was ruined? That's all I'm trying to say. So I'm definitely I want to weave that line, and I've had some commenters kind of asking questions about this too, that like from a lore perspective, this is pretty much the world of Ocarina of Time between it and the Wind Waker, right before the Great Flood. From a lore perspective, that is what this map is. And because of that, how do I honor that in the details? And I've also had a commenter ask, I think this is a great point, and that I'm still kind of waffling on, but I've started to recreate some locations from Breath of the Wild. And is that appropriate? For instance, here's Hateno Village. If you recognize this is the private oasis in Wind Waker. This is the island that's going to be on. And I thought it would be really cool if the private oasis was where the tech lab is, right, in Hateno Village. It's the top of a mountain there, right? And then Hateno Village, I've started building down below it. And I'm proud of how that's turning out. And there's still some work to do. Link's house is going to be like over here. But yeah, like I've kind of gotten some questions about, like, as I'm borrowing locations from Breath of the Wild, from a lore perspective, is that appropriate? And for me, like, I still don't know exactly where I sit on that question, but I love Breath of the Wild. I think that it's Hyrule as much as any other game in the Zelda franchise is taking place in Hyrule. And I think it has some iconic locations that that fans are going to remember and want to see when you see new versions of Hyrule. So I kind of feel like since I'm modeling this in the world after Breath of the Wild is made, I want to honor what it added to Hyrule. Because I guess what it comes down to from a lore standpoint, right? And like the real world lore, of course, is that like Hateno Village was just, no one came up with it until Breath of the Wild. But you could also kind of imagine that maybe it does take place, or maybe Hateno Village does exist in Ocarina of Time. We just never got to see it or explore it. And I think that either of those could be fair. I think that could be a fair assessment as well. Like I said, like you look all over the map and there's a lot of work left to do on the texturing, but I'm really proud of like, you know, you sit on like the city street and you can imagine it's starting to feel like Hateno Village in the style of Wind Waker, even if there's a lot of missing assets. Very excited about where it's going. And I think it'll be really cool to like be down here in Hyrule Castle and be able to look up and see Hateno Village there on the mountaintop. That'll be really rewarding. If you're asking why, I mean, I don't have to defend the decision about why Dragon Roost Island is Death Mountain, right? I mean, come on, guys. Like, I don't think I have to defend it. I think it's a lot more appealing. Because imagine if it isn't, right? Imagine that if Fire Mountain is Death Mountain, and Fire Mountain can be connected to Death Mountain. I haven't modeled Fire Mountain yet, but I think I'm going to use the, I've started to using like Gale Island as a base, right? And it can be connected to Death Mountain in a way, but I think ultimately like Dragon Roost Island is way taller than Fire Mountain. Fire Mountain's going to be like this tall. And I've elevated Dragon Roost Island a good bit. Like if I turn on the sea level, I've added a lot of height to it just because that feels right to me. It's not game accurate at that point. And if you really want to be a stickler for the lore, you might start asking, well, how did it get lower in the world of the Wind Waker? Who knows? Maybe there was some erosion, some excavating. I don't fully know. I just know that as an artist, it looked a lot more satisfying to like be down here and see Death Mountain and see the peak of it just be a little higher. So yeah, like I feel like I've shown off what there is to show off. Oh man, there it is. Oh Lord. Last one. Excuse me, guys. I think that's enough for this video. I showed off a lot of the Faron region in the last video, and I wanted to take the time just to show you what I was working on, because I've been so encouraged by all the comments that y'all have left, and I think it's been rewarding just to kind of be up front and kind of show you, no, this is the progress I have so far. You know, just like there's a lot of stuff that's incomplete, but it's getting worked on, and it's been encouraging just to see everything that you have to say. Feel free to comment if you have any ideas or thoughts or concerns, or, you know, if you see something that I'm working on, you're like, I don't think that's quite right. That's not Hyrule in the way that I imagine it. But like I said, just comment if you have any ideas. You know, I'd love to hear them. Feedback, concerns, positive, negative. And like I said in the end of the last video too, if you want to support me in other ways, I'm a filmmaker and I have a main channel where I post all my short films, and I do a large variety of content. I also do some 3D content in those short films. There's a lot of CG in some of them. I'm also a musician. If you've heard music in this video, it was probably mine. So go look me up on Spotify. That's Joe Kendrick. I do, you know, I score all of my own short films. And so, you know, I do a lot of kind of soundtrack style music that you might be into. And if you're a Zelda fan, you know, you're probably into that kind of soundtrack style of music. So yeah, feel free to look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify. I'll put some links in the description. Feel free to subscribe to my main channel. Enjoy. Thank you for all of your support. And I feel like I need like a catchphrase. I don't know. Is this how I become a YouTuber? It all starts with a catchphrase. Anyway,